Tegnap kiderült, hogy Zelenskyy elnök az amerikai elnökválasztáson az ukránbarát elnöknek juttatott pénzt Donald Trumpal szemben. Vagyis ukrán pénzből támogatták a demokraták kampányát. Ugyan ezt teszik most Magyarországon. Ukrán barát kormányt akarnak, ukrán ügynököket küldenek, az ukrán barát ellenzéknek segítenek. Az ukrán aranykonvoj ügyében folytatott nyomozás azt is felderítette, hogy nem csak nyugatról áramlott Ukrajnába a pénz, hanem visszafelé is. Vagyis az elszegényedett Ukrajnából folyamatosan szállítottak dollármilliárdokat Magyarországon keresztül nyugatra. Azt is tudjuk, hogy a pénzek nagy részét átutalták Amerikába. Zelenskyy elnöknek semmi sem drága, ukrán arannyal és dollárral fizet azoknak, akik hajlandók támogatni Ukrajna háborúját. Magyarországon itt ennek véget vetünk.
Woo, all right, we got a bombshell that just dropped. And while people saying, oh, what is the Trump administration doing? When are they going to hold people accountable? We're seeing it happen in real time. And folks saying, well, why haven't we seen any of the big fish going to jail yet? Is because there were 232 federal prosecutors that were brought in under the Biden administration, strategically placed throughout the country. And what they've been doing is acting like activists in robes, doing everything they can to block people that were within that administration and within the Obama administration, trying to block from keeping them from going to prison, getting in trouble and being held accountable. And what the Trump administration is doing is very wisely playing it. They're getting them, putting them on the record, getting them under oath, and exposing it to the people where the public opinion helps influence these radical judges. Not to mention, they're at the right. The Republicans have judges strategically around too. And boy, they've been taking these cases on, but the lamestream media has been refusing to broadcast it and play it because they know the ramifications of the American people knowing what's really been going on will just put that final nail in the Democrats' coffin because they're using propaganda on steroids to try to keep this party afloat. And with this new news break, this is not helping them at all because what Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, has exposed is that the Ukrainian government was taking the taxpayer dollars that were being sent to them by America, of course, on behalf of the Democrats, and was redirecting it back, funneling it into the Democratic Party, into the Democratic National Committee, and to fund the Joe Biden campaign. Maybe the reason why Scamala had that $2.5 billion. So in this video, you're going to hear from Zelenskyy. You're going to hear exactly what happened. You're also going to hear from Sleepy, Creepy, Piss Pants Joe. And it's going to lay out. But wait until you hear how Biden's advisor was brought under oath and what he exposed. And you may say, well, Brian, Biden's gone. Why is this important? It's because just because Biden's gone as the figurehead, they still were doing it. And now they have been busted. Now we understand why the Democrats lost their mind when USAID was crippled by Doge. We see now why they're going crazy about trying to get President Trump by any means necessary because he knew what was happening. He got the briefing, but they took him out of power. They smeared his name so bad to where people on the left and even some weaklings on the right, oh, Trump is this. Everything is blamed on Trump. Oh, and you got these black pillars spreading like Tucker Carlson, like Candace Owens, who are nothing more than paid shields. They thought that they can put into the center of MAGA, detonate it, and make MAGA explode. Not happening. Not only is MAGA getting stronger, MAGA is literally bigger now than it was when President Trump took office in 2024. And it's going to get even bigger on the heels of things like this breaking. So check this out. Explosive intel report. Ukraine war aid may have been funneled to the Biden campaign. And I'm going to get back to that article. But the first clip I want you to listen to, Mike Donnellan, who is Joe Biden's closest advisor. Listen to what he says under oath. Because these folks are being held accountable, folks. Just because the lamestream media isn't broadcasting it, it's happening. And I'm going to keep bringing it to you. But check this out.
To be clear, would the amount of pay you received for your role on the campaign, would that have changed depending on how far into the race President Biden made it?
My sense is that in my view, the money was that it was a guarantee. The campaign that we had a negotiation, and that's my memory of the agreement.
Would you have received a bonus depending on the way the campaign went? Was that a possibility?
How the campaign went.
Were there any circumstances in which you would have received a bonus?
Yes, it was.
What were those circumstances?
That Joe Biden would have been reelected president.
What was the bonus of Ben?
I believe it would have been $4 million.
In addition to the $4 million.
And y'all, while we talking about all this fraud and exposing the Democrat Party, do me a solid. If you're enjoying this video, and only if you're enjoying it, would you hit that like button or hit that hype button? And here's why. YouTube loves to know that people are enjoying the video and that they're seeing engagement in the comment section. So leave a comment. Tell me what you think about the video. Do you agree or disagree? Hit the like button or the hype button. It really helps because when YouTube sees that, they say, oh, this video is good, and they'll spread it and they'll promote it all across the YouTube platform. So it really helps. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe. Now I'm gonna get back to the video. Thank you. Did you hear that? So this man, they're talking about how the money was being funneled in, and Donnellan was paid $4 million to say, hey, Joe Biden's cool and support all of these things. And if Joe Biden would have got reelected, he was guaranteed a bonus of another $4 million, all to prop up the lie while the big steal was taking place. And now we can't forget about this. I'm sure you've seen this before, but I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't play it for you. This here was in 2017. Listen to Joe Biden as he talks about his visit to Ukraine, to Kyiv specifically.
I remember going over convincing our team, our others, to convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I'm not going to, or we're not going to give you the $1 billion.
Now, remember, the prosecutor you're talking about is the person that was investigating the gas company that Hunter Biden ended up being put on the board of. What was the name of that energy company there in Ukraine? It slips my mind, but it was a huge investigation that was going on into this energy company. And that state prosecutor was on the heels, exposing the fraud, exposing everything. And Joe Biden goes over there to Ukraine, to Kyiv specifically, speaking to the Ukrainian government. And this is what he's speaking about. So that prosecutor was investigating the corruption. And it starts with a B. Oh, my God, I'm sure it'll come to me. If you know the name of that, please put it in the comments. The name of the Burisma. It was Burisma. They were investigating the corruption of Burisma, and Joe Biden wasn't happy with that. And then after what he's going to say here, they put Hunter Biden, who had no energy experience, who had no foreign diplomat experience, and wasn't registered under FARA, under the Foreign Agents Act. But this is what Joe Biden is talking about. So the state prosecutor was investigating the corruption of a company that was kicking money back, and this is what he's explaining he did.
They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting $1 billion. I said, you're not getting $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I looked, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid.
Now, what does that mean to put in place somebody who was solid? Now, here's what the groundbreaking news has been with Tulsi Gabbard exposed. Check this out. On the heels of all of the stuff that's taking place in the country right now, seniors, it's extremely important that you make sure you've got the best Medicare plan available, because this year, Medicare plans are expected to increase 10%. And that's $215 out of your Social Security check. And guess what? Some of your doctors may not be in network. Some of your prescriptions may no longer be covered. And that would suck for you to be going to visit your doctor to find out they're not in network, or for you to need a prescription to find out it's no longer covered. Why take the risk? With Chapter, you can reach out to Chapter, and a free phone call can last as short as only 20 minutes and speak to one of the highly skilled, unbiased professionals that will help you make sure you got the best Medicare plan available. If you've got the best, great. But if not, they can make sure you've got what you need. So use that number there on the screen, or visit the website at askchapter.org/realpolitics and let Chapter make sure you've got everything you need.
So as we've gone through the weaponization story over the last decade, it was all about prosecuting and ruining people's lives. But we're now getting a sense that maybe Democrats were working with foreign powers to have them interfere in our election. We got a little bit of this a couple weeks ago with the China stuff, the FBI finding these driver's licenses. China and the sources the FBI had saying that the goal of those licenses were to get fake ballots to vote for Joe Biden in the 2020 election. This morning, thanks to the National Security Agency and Tulsi Gabbard, the DNI, they declassified an intercept report. Our government intercepted the Ukrainian government talking about a plot with our own workers, meaning people that work for USAID, the State Department Foreign Aid Agency, to route hundreds of millions of dollars to Ukraine, our money, taxpayer money. Yep. It goes there, and then they're going to route it and launder it back in the United States and put it in Joe Biden's 2024 campaign coffers.
It was always interesting why Joe Biden was so interested in Ukraine. Also, so many lawmakers were very interested. I mean, let's call it.
Particularly on the Democratic side.
And some Republicans.
Yeah,
Lindsey Graham spent a lot of time in Ukraine.
That's right.
And it was always why? What's the hook? And you couldn't put two and two together. Some people thought lawmakers were trying to get money back into their districts through Ukraine's USAID into Ukraine, money back into these lawmakers' districts, which turns into donations.
That's right.
But it was just very, very odd why. And I was on a network before I came here who would not let me call out that exact phenomenon.
Isn't that amazing?
And I'm just wondering if there was maybe some of that funds going back into that network as well. Who knows? But that's speculation. But this goes on, though. This how big is it?
Well, the intercept is absolutely clear. There's a lot of detail in the intercept of who did what. What Tulsi Gabbard has done is asked the head of USAID, go look for the emails and the evidence. If you find this grant occurring, let's get it to the FBI and start a prosecution. So this has just happened in the last 24 hours, so it's still unfolding. But the declassification, everybody can read the document. It's pretty stunning. I mean, it's a pretty complicated plot. Move the money multiple times, get it into Americans' hands. Americans have converted to Joe Biden.
Question.
Yep.
USAID still operating?
It is, but about 1/4 the size. I mean,
still 1/4.
Yeah, very small amount of money, though. A couple $1 billion compared to about $12 billion here. I know it's funny to say a couple billion small, but it used to be about $12 billion.
That's taxpayer money. It is insane.
Yeah.
And I know Trump tried to shut the whole thing down, and then they pushed him not to.
They did.
So as you just heard, they intercepted and Tulsi Gabbard declassified how during the Biden administration, intelligence agencies intercepted correspondence between Ukraine and American workers, American people within government, of the plot to take the monies that we were kicking over to Ukraine for the quote unquote war efforts, and how they were going to maneuver it, move it around to different shell companies, funnel it back into people's hands that were then going to use it to go to Joe Biden. And if you remember, when Kamala Harris took over, she had a chest of money of about $1.5 billion that ballooned up, the highest ever collected in the history of campaigns, period. I think probably in the world. $1.5 billion, which ballooned up to $2.5 billion because they just pulled another $1 billion from some weird super PAC who gave $1 billion to this woman. And that's one of the reasons why she was the only person who could step in and run, because legally, no other candidate would have been able to step in and utilize donations that had went to the Biden campaign, except his running mate, because the campaigns came in for both because she was on the ticket. So that's why they knew they didn't want her. They tried to replace her. If you remember a year earlier, they didn't want this woman. But look at what happened. That's how they got that chest of money. So they intercepted that correspondence showing that manipulation and fraud was taking place. The Biden administration swept it under the rug. But one thing these intelligence agencies don't do, for whatever reason, maybe they're unable to do, it's illegal. And luckily for us, they stash these documents. Sometimes they move them into weird places where it makes it that much harder to find, but they found it. And Tulsi Gabbard declassified it. So now they've already got things going already for prosecutions. This just broke on like Friday, like the 25th. This is when this all came out, 25th of March. So this is new, folks. And check your cable news networks and see how many of them are speaking about it. So when you wonder, why is it that these prosecutions aren't happening? Why aren't we getting any of the big fish? Can you imagine trying to prosecute Tim Walz in Minnesota, where their local news media acts like he's the victim? And guess where the jury pool comes from? That pool of people. And nothing would be worse than to bring him up on a prosecution and him being acquitted. But what they found is that Minnesota does have conservative judges. But what they have to do is make sure that the evidence is so overwhelming when it comes to people like a Walz or like a John Brennan. Now, all of the others, All of the other prosecutions of the judges, of the congresswoman that just got found guilty, of all types of things that's happening. The lamestream media just isn't covering it, but it's happening, y'all. And this is going to send some people to prison because they got him dead to rights. Now listen to Zelenskyy. Zelensky's going to admit he has no idea where the money is. Check this out.
Дивіться, я коли чую, і раніше чув, і сьогодні ми чуємо від Сполучених Штатів Америки, що Америка дала Україні сотні мільярдів, 177, якщо сказати більш точно. Така звучала точна цифра, яку підтримували або голосував Конгрес, тощо різні організації. Дивіться, я як президент воюючої країни вам говорю, ми отримали більше 75. Тобто 100 мільярдів з цих 177 або 200, говорять навіть деякі люди, ми ніколи не отримували. І це важливо. Бо ми говоримо про конкретні речі, бо ми отримали це не грошима, а зброєю. Ми зброю отримали на 70 з чимось мільярдів. Є навчання, тренування, є додаткові транспорт, є не тільки ціну на зброю, були гуманітарні програми, соціальні тощо. Але коли говорять, що Україна під час війни отримала 200 мільярдів на підтримку армії тощо, це неправда. Я не знаю, де всі ці гроші.
He flat out said he don't know where the money is. And now with this kickback funnel scheme that's been exposed, it makes you wonder like, damn, yeah, he doesn't know where the money is because he just don't want to out the Bidens and the Schumers and all of those people, the Pelosi's, who are all, and you know, I used to wonder like, how can Zelenskyy just walk over and the Democrats go crazy and he walks out with another $90 billion? Trump used to say Zelensky's the greatest salesman in the world, walks over, not in a suit, not looking diplomatic at all, wearing military fatigues as if he's on the front line, and walks out with $100 million. He did it again and again and again. And now we find out why. It was in the Democrats' best interest to get that happening. And then they spoke about Lindsey Graham. One thing that always terrifies me about Lindsey Graham is he has no children, none. And he's a war hawk. He doesn't care about sending our sons and daughters. I have a son that's in the military. He's a Navy corpsman, so he's stationed with the Marines. So if it goes down, my son is their medic. And when you got people like Lindsey Graham, who has no children, who has, we know of, no family members in the military, he doesn't care. And then he gets all of those kickbacks from all those weapons manufacturers around the world because they get rich when war takes place. But the Democrats, though, they were working with Zelenskyy, getting money kickbacks, funding their campaigns. And that's why they were so bullish on getting Zelenskyy the money and so bullish on USAID and lost their mind when President Trump shut it down, shrunk it to a quarter of what it was doing. So let's dig into this article a little bit. Have you ever wondered why Joe Biden and the Democrats were so insistent that Congress send endless billions to Ukraine? Well, now new declassified intel drops a bombshell that raises some troubling questions about it, and it stinks to high heaven. In 2022, U.S. spy agencies discovered Ukrainian officials were plotting to divert hundreds of millions in American taxpayer cash meant for clean energy projects to Joe Biden's 2024 presidential campaign and the Democratic National Committee. Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, recently learned of the intercepts and has asked the U.S. Agency for International Development officials to scour for records to see if the plot was actually carried out and whether a criminal referral should be made to the FBI. Just the news reports. Gabbard's team has not found substantive evidence that the intercepted allegations were thoroughly investigated during the Biden administration, and the communications are not believed to be tied to Russian disinformation efforts, officials said. You know, Democrats love to say, oh, that's Russia. Nope, the Biden administration did not investigate it because that would be them investigating themselves. Of course not. Gee, I wonder why the Biden administration didn't investigate the funneling of millions of dollars to the Biden campaign. The Ukrainian government and unspecified U.S. government personnel through USAID in Kyiv reportedly developed a plan that will provide hundreds of millions of U.S. taxpayer dollars to fund an infrastructure project for Ukraine that would be used as a cover to send approximately 90% of funds allocated to the DNC to fund Joe Biden's re-election campaign, report said. So they were going to create this fake, like Trump says, green new scam, this fake energy deal in Ukraine and take 90% of that money and put it right back over to the Democrats into Biden. And you know why? Because Democrat fundraising has fallen off a cliff. The Republicans are outraising them literally 5 or 6 to 1. And they act like, oh, Democrats have all of this support. No, they don't. Just like these No Kings protests, which I have a video coming out later today, was an absolute failure. It literally was funded to the tune of $272 million. And wait till you see the billionaires' names that the government, the Trump team founded. They found it this week. We got to the root. Now we just got to see what happens. USAID. You don't say. Another piece of the puzzle comes into place. Remember when Democrats were freaking out about Donald Trump closing USAID last year? They claimed USAID was saving lives. I mean, sure, if by saving lives you mean funneling millions in cash to Joe Biden and the Democratic Party, sure. They were confident the project would be funded initially, even though at some time in the future, the project would be disapproved as unnecessary, the report continued. At this time, the money would already be allocated and impossible to return or use for a different purpose. The money was reportedly laundered through 2 American subcontractors as part of the scheme to divert the money to Democrat campaigns, making the source untraceable. The plan included details of how subcontractors would be funded through U.S. companies so that how the funds were spent and allocated would be difficult to track. What a system, right? Some shady contracts no one could audit, and poof, your Ukraine aid becomes Biden bucks. And the Biden administration made no effort to investigate. So it's unclear how much money may have been diverted to the Biden's campaign or to the DNC. A lot of things are starting to make sense, aren't they? Biden failed to stop Russia from invading Ukraine. Biden seemed unable to end the war. And based on this new information, he had every financial incentive to let it continue. That's why it always felt like he was demanding blank checks for Ukraine and pushing us closer and deeper into involvement. Trump, however, has always had peace as his main objective and has actually been trying to negotiate an actual peace deal. Man, that is nuts. So now where we all were saying, why do we keep sending this money to Ukraine? We got issues here. We see it now. USAID. Democrats lost their mind, and we find out they're spending $20 million for a homosexual Kermit the Frog play in Kazakhstan, or they're spending $50 million on LGBTQ training in a freaking small hut of a city in Bahrain or Bundasia. I'm just making up places because that's just how far the money was supposedly going. And now we find out it was getting kicked back. They created a fake energy project in Ukraine and had American subcontractors on the take working with them that would take that money, put it into the hands of some Americans that could then act like they're contributing it and they're donating it. That's how somebody like James Tallarico in Texas winds up with $100 million spent on his campaign, and he was just a state legislature. Where'd that come from? That's why Act Blue is under investigation for taking foreign money and then funneling it to Democrats under the names of American donors who had no idea they made 30 donations totaling $50,000 when really they only made one of $20 3 years ago. That's the deep state. That's the swamp. And if you pay attention to anything, when you keep saying, oh, what is Trump doing? What is Trump doing? Look at the web these people have weaved over the last 40 years of Democrat rule. Think about it. The Democrats have dominated Washington. They've held presidential office and power in Congress far more than Republicans. And every time they would put in their own puppet-controlled bureaucrats in unelected positions that they could hold for life and toe the party line. That's why President Trump came in and took a sledgehammer to all of those freaking little agencies. Then the Supreme Court said, nope, the president has control over those unelected bureaucratic agencies. He can fire and hire as he see fit because they tried to stop him. So where everybody acts like, oh, Trump is this big villain. No, they hate Trump coming because they worked for years to put this unstoppable web together. And even with Trump taking a sledgehammer to it, look at how challenging it is to break through, but he's busting through. And we still got almost 3 years left. So rather than feed into the black pillars of saying, oh, what is Trump doing? They know that his hands are tied because if he really wanted to go rogue dictator-like, he could squash all of it, but it would play into the Democrats' hands of saying, look, he's a dictator. Look, he's a dictator. So the man is trying to be diplomatic. He's following every rule and every law to the T because they're waiting to catch him slipping. And say, oh, look, Trump did this to violate the law. And that's the last thing the president wants to be seen as somebody breaking the law. That's why they can't stop what he's doing. They can complain about it. They can put smear media reports out about it. They can spin fake news about it, but legally they can't stop it. And now that we find this out, I'm waiting to see this ball drop because, folks, they are doing it. They're getting people under oath. They're getting testimony. They had the Clintons in a freaking deposition under oath. Who would have thought that that would have happened? Because Hillary Clinton is like one of the queens in the deep state. We got rogue judges. Did you see the congresswoman that was just found guilty 25 out of 27 counts? You probably didn't because the lamestream media didn't cover it. She had $5 million FEMA fraud as a Florida congresswoman in Washington. Guilty. McCarver, the one that hit the ICE agent, her trial is coming up. The judges prosecuted, found guilty. The lamestream media does not report it. And watch what's coming down the pike now. From what I heard from a reliable source, President Trump and his team are putting together RICOs where you could tie all of these people together in one continuous organization, still perpetuating the crime to this day. Because every time they tell another lie, every time they try to misdirect and they create a fake story to cover that up, that is continuing the criminal enterprise. So the statute of limitations are null and void if he goes RICO and ties them all together rather than individual, which is what the Democrats want, because they'll just motion and stall it out for years trying to wait out for Trump being in office. But not this time, y'all. So I just wanted to bring you this breakthrough. The Biden administration were busted by the intelligence communities working with Ukraine to funnel U.S. taxpayer dollars back to the DNC and to the Biden campaign, which became the Kamala Harris campaign. And guess what? I believe they were still trying to do it. But hey, tell me what you think. And if you stayed and you watched this video, thank you so much from the top and bottom of my heart. And forgive my voice. I was doing some yellow hat with my grandchildren this weekend, so my voice is a little scratchy. But I'm going to get some tea in it, some honey, and I'll be ready for you tomorrow. If you haven't already, hit that like button. And if you are not subscribed already, subscribe. Most importantly, y'all, make sure that you stay safe and that you be great. I'm Brian Maxwell saying I look forward to seeing you at the top. Over and out, y'all.